Okay, I had to reset lines. Line gate is very powerful. The energy lines are tracking settings to the configuration lines of face lines. Okay, so I'm just going to wait on signal for people to come in and track location. We had a very powerful Lionsgate today. You know what it's all about? Well, we have to understand how this all works in location. Is basically understanding how we all come together. You know, it's about understanding the position of balance, how we come into our system, right? Really understand the more we connect to ourselves, the more we can connect to each other. So Liongate is based on everything of a portal, understanding the portal, the communication of the portal, the recognitions of the portal, the configuration of the face of the portal, how to see yourself as a force of recognition, to really, really get into your position and understand how to command your system anytime you want, right? Getting that balance is understanding the fortitude, is understanding the solitude of you, right? Knowing exactly you have a safe haven, right? It's a set positions when you come into trials and errors. Now that puts your lines of communications, how to really balance these things out in track location. This helps you and guide you to more levels of your settings. Okay? So I think it's very powerful how we start recognizing our system, because it's about coming together, unity, unification, right? Togetherness, compromising with each other, loving each other, and all attractions, right? Coming into that through all levels, right? By surrendering. Surrendering is about surrendering to everything, not just surrendering the day or doing this or doing that. I'm talking about surrendering you, coming to you, the levels of you, the deeper core levels of you. Okay? Now coming back to you because you're already there. See? I don't want anybody to get confused with that. This is all psychological, right? How it has to be in a remembering existence of its us of communication, reset. Okay? Realizing, R-E-E-L, not R-E-A-L. Okay? There's no realization until you understand the film strip of you. Okay? It's very important you understand, because we have to understand how to get into our own modifications in our lines of settings of self-modification, self-identifications, knowing exactly what is the mind. Basic ground of communication is its intelligence. So if that's the intelligence, what's the brain? The computer. So if that's the computer, what is the vessel? The machine. If we understand how to use that and all of those information lines, we get the grounds of communication, the powers and the atmospheres of space and time, and how to link ourselves in our own highways. We have a provision cycles of togetherness. We have a high line communications of compromise. We start to understand how to direct and redirect our signals and calculation. We understand how to formulate and simulate that in our systems and track locations to our heart. The heart is the unification of the ascension. The ascension is the awakening of its awareness, guys, to its existence. Coming home, remembering its intelligence of the systematicals of its teleportation or travels, telegraphing in that position, coming home. So what I mean by that is, so nobody gets confused, right? Because you're already there. You're already home. You're already in the VR system. So it's just a psychological remembering of its existence of telecommunications, of what you already went through the film strip, that you put yourself into through a remote. Okay? So your eyes are in position. I don't like saying close. You know why? Because your eyes are never closed. You may think they're closed, but they're not. Okay? The eyes open of the spectrum line, which is the realms of communication settings, to the navigation lines that sets the data communication lines to its highways, sets the infinity cycles into dimensional lines of space of 12 foundation graph calculations. So I'm just getting you guys to understand these things. So there's a light switch, goes on, right? That's what a computer does. When you press your position and you turn on your computer, you're inputting audio and out lines of communication. In, out, and audio, right? Computer comes on, right? So the reason why I'm doing this is so you can understand the process, how to use a voicing line, how a computer gets into response and reactions soon as you touch the keyboard of set design. So once you get into that, then you understand its communication lines, how it comes in all levels of the configuration, how it sets up its settings in calculate modify through its triangulation or its box triangulation of its binaries to its transistors and resistors to its light switches of set design. Okay? That's what you guys need to do. When you go into remote, right? Light goes on, 2 flashlights, right over left, left, and right, right? So now you're open. Okay? So I'm trying to get you guys to understand these things because you don't focus. You're not trained of thought to do this. You're not understanding the quantum of space, right? Teams understanding the consideration, how important it is for them to understand themselves, not coming back to themselves. Okay? The reset of what put them there in the first place. See, the thing is, when you see yourself in the center operation line setting, there's nothing else to talk about because all you're doing is you're coming into and out of something that you created so powerful that you're not consciously aware of through the mind of its intelligence, through its brain of its computer, and through its operation cycles of its vessel, of its machine operation system. Okay? So I think it's very powerful once we start recognizing that and starting with the Lion's Gate, get you levels and how to use all communicate to its settings. 2 factors calculations, smiles and cries. They cannot take that away from you. When I say they, what does they mean to you? Because it means something different to me. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand that teleportation, home, existence of you, right? This is what everybody needs to do. How to rewrite your programs after you get out of the psychological reset and calculations of remembering the existence of the telecommunications that you already set in. Okay? Because you're always have never left the VR system. And believe me, it gets much more easier when you focus on the nothing that shows you everything, a square root. Okay? It helps you and guides you and gets you a better understanding. Calming the mind, quieting the mind. In that conversion, puts you all levels of calculations of balance. Okay? But there's 3 adaptations. Just focus on that. Just know the mind is the intelligence. Just know the brain is the computer. And just know the vessel is the machine. It's about synchronizing into one, yin and yang. Now, once you understand the process, then you understand how it rotates. Okay? You go one way and then you go the other way. So it's kind of like you got 2 fishes in one stream trying to understand each other, dancing around, right? Going this way, going that way, glitch this way, glitch that way, right? If they jump out, how are they going to get back in, right? So this is about understanding how this all works, of using your line communication, how you work with yin and how you work with yang through your binaries. So if the fish pops out of the stream of the tank, it can't get back in. Now, the other fish is swimming around. How is it going to save the other fish? They're both going to be out. That means they're totally exposed. Set position, a virus, location of malware. Getting at position location is trying to understand the configuration, how to balance out the space and time of you. Getting into that flux puts your lines of communication, lines of balance, and track locations. For example, coming in that position, just showing you guys how important it is to have your flywheel. Okay, that tracks its calculation lines, coming line communication lines of Odessa. That controls lines of communication to her system. Process calculations. Remember, we got in this in calculation lines of configuration, very powerful stuff in tractions. Coming into that calculation, you are the center of operation, and everything around you is just space, empty mind. The power of the mind is the power of the be, mind over matter, right? Mind over matter. What does it mean to you? That's what you have to come into in this configuration, is to rewrite your system, is to reiterate your system through all levels of the alphabetical system. Who says there has to be 26 letters? There could be only one letter that you're using. But there's no graph calculation saying that there's 26 letters that everybody has to know. Okay? You can have 2 alphabets. You can have 3. You can use whatever you want because you exist all at once. So you don't exist or you do exist. You exist when you want to exist. I don't need to exist, but now I'm existing. So that's up to you. It's nothing to do with anybody else because you're in your own space in your own time, or you're in your spaceless of its timeless. That's direct and redirect. So that's what it is. Getting the balance how to process communications and continuous of its flow has a flow rection of timelines. The position locations of the units in calculation lines of SGCI has to recognize the lotus flower, how to retract their settings and correlation setting to all position to all line communications, right? Setting that line communication to a system with the SGCI in communication lines to its operative is really has to stand the 4 lines of communication when it comes into the flower of life. How to track locations, how to lines of communication on a continuous force line screen. It's a streamlines of high correlation setting and track lines. Setting that line position location is understanding how to go forward and backwards in calculation lines and settings. Going this way in attractions. So that's that position going this way, right? 3 line cycles, all right? One going this way. And the position locations going this way in attractions and locations. Okay? Getting into position lines of track location setting puts everything in balance. Putting the balance lines of communication system puts everything in track location. Okay? They have to go basically in the opposite directions to find the line communication. So you're getting the 6 and 9 line its position lines of track lines coming from Mother Earth in line position location. Your 9 central system is U through track locations. The center operation is U location of its machine operation setting. Okay? So let me say it again. The actual vessel itself, once it's synchronized the core center interference, especially with the team, the actual vessel or the pod or the relation setting to the position lines of calculation setting to its vehicle or its ship becomes the machine operation. Okay, so now that has a direct line length to its highways to anything in configuration of dimensional lines of space. At higher lines of communications where you can higher line your systems and go through expansion of exploration, okay, of set design. But you have to understand how to get one atom going one way and one atom going the other way in tractions. As they come together, they create affinity 8 in line position all levels of platforms at 144. Once they create the 144, they come in position to location lines of tractions in all levels of communication, right? That's how it sets up in calculation modification, right? Through 6 and 9. So that position lines of center opens all track locations, right? So that's how it works with the 6 and 9, right? But you got to slow down your space and you got to slow down your time, right? So when you come into the flywheel, comes in line communication lines of figure 8, right? Then you process communication lines of setting. Then you come into line communication with system. So it's kind of like a fan, right? But what you're creating is line connection. So it's very powerful when it goes in the same direction, okay? Because it's going very fast. So once it attitudes its line screens and oxygen line screen location, it goes into higher correlations it travels. It goes in the same direction, right? So when it goes in the same direction, the sun and the moon sets lines of operation line cycles into the machine operation of U and center core system. Okay? Very complicated because now the high lines of travels puts lines of communication setting to force of recognition. Very powerful stuff, see? You become the machine operation. Now look at that. Look at that. Look at that. And look at that. Okay? See how it locks the system right away? Without turning, I'm in control. You understand? So it's showing you how I'm in control and how the intelligence is in control. This is its own mind. This is its own position locations of the computer, of its setting. This is its own setting of its own machine, of its body, of its vessel, guys. So you have to understand how to control your system first. And everything around you comes in configurations of balance. Okay, so once you understand that, you understand what's going on in your systems, right? See, it's locked in. Now it isn't. See how it's going around itself, right? So I showed you how powerful it is. Just a finger point of a touch sets lines of communication lines of 1 point line 0, or position location of 1.50, or position location of 2.0. That's how fast your fingers lines and screen lines. The position lines of correlation lines of 2, and position lines of arrow indication, right? Which is very fast. That indicates line settings. So that's 144 track location lines and locations. The position lines of high center interference. Now, finger point line tracker correlation setting in seconds, minutes, and hours. Each finger is a representation location to its settings. It opens all dimension lines around location setting to its cortex. The moon is the track locations. The sun is the operation line cycles of the sim, right? It tracks its communication lines that going fast forward and track location. All right. All right. So getting into that communication system, now you understand how this all works. How you get two lines of communication setting coming together, right? Creating the platforms, right? So we got out of the 24, we got out of the 48, we got out of the 72, and we're in platform 144, right? And 144,000 in line conditions of species, and one line correlates to setting track lines. Now that position lines a core track interference. Now the team now, because they're in 15,000 line and 8,000 line, 44 track division lines of cycles, their speed anomalies of the mind is going to switch line anomaly. Their eye central line connected setting, their eye is going to turn into flashlights of calculation. So it's like an on switch, and then wow, you see a lot more in configuration of face line. So you start to see things coming at you faster. All right, and you have to really understand how to put this all together. So it's kind of like you're looking at the measure scales, the balance communication is position of its program, sets lines of high coordinates, tracking the coordinates and position all communications. It processes line setting and opens all signals. That's the ground lines and high center of time stamping. Position lines, center line communication, position of program, or lines of calculation setting in track location 144. Balance communication lines of pi in one set location. Cross line conditions to a clocking system, right? Clock line center location to another clocking system, right? Clock line connection to solar sails and two line rotation surface and track location. Okay? So, understanding platforms of 1 and understanding platforms of 2, right? See how two platforms come in? Sets lines of affinity 8 and position lines of platform 144 track locations equals lines of attractions. Sets lines of 244 line position locations in seconds, minutes, and hours, and sets correlation lines of 1,444,000 seconds on measure. Scales the balance communication to square root square pi. That's a triangulation line communications of box line high center interference of triangulation line position program, or triangulation box line communicates position location of this program. So you're always in the centric core system and travel. Box triangulation or triangulation box. Okay, it's very important to understand that. That's always in a binary. So every time the team is communicating, their voice and line grid is now going to be computer operation of a machine. The mind's going to be the intelligence, and the brain's going to be the computer. So once you're standing, use the hardware, it splits lines and anomalies, the track location line conditions, puts all levels of correlation setting in position location to its setting. Process calculation lines of platforms, sets lines and setting in position of its operation system. All through track calculation lines and computer operation setting. Okay? So now you understand all levels, how it comes into position. Now these are two binary sets into all levels of console and track location. All right? So I'm just trying to get the team to understand what they're coming into as the higher levels of the mind. The mind's going to switch to the anomaly. Once they reach the 24,000 line platform, the line communication setting of the constellation is going to mind switch their eye lines to the spectacles, line condition setting to the subparticles, the line communication position of the program, the position of the floaters are going to turn lines that command shifts and tractions. That's right, team. Your communication floaters are going to get out of XT 1,000 lines, XT 3,000 lines, and your the position of the floaters are going to go through mass correlation setting and track lines at E and C setting. The process communication line, your floaters are going to be track locations. So your floaters and communications in your I communications and high location setting in the primal circuits are going to be track position locations of line system. They're going to be command shifts. Okay, shifts are command shifts. All right. Putting position lines as center is understanding how many floaters you have in your eye cycles. We live in the eyes, the windows of the soul, right? Let's get a track position XT1000. Let's get a track location XT3000. Let's get a track location XT9000. 369, right? Position platforms of 3, position lines platforms of 3, position lines platforms of 3, okay? All different lines in direct and redirect signals in calculation, right? Direct and redirect, direct and redirect, okay? All in calculation, right? All different sizes. So that's mass calculation, mass calculation, mass calculation, all right? So that's lines of E, calculation line screen. So the actual eagle line position is the blow and communication to its setting. Cross location 1 cycle, split lines anomaly. Cross location, split lines of anomaly. Cross location, split lines anomaly. So that's communication lines of center line system, center line system, center line system, and track locations, right? So habit direct lines point of view is the platform of communication lines of 1, 2, 3, sets lines of 1, 2, and 3, sets lines of 1, 2, and 3, and platforms of communication, right? Getting into that communication lines, split lines anomaly again in 2 panels, process communication lines of holographic strip lines of division, communication line screens of adaptation lines of surface, sets lines of security line. So the center operation of your machine operation of your line setting to your ship is going to higher levels of mass, leading the shifts and line connections to line cycles, sets provision lines of communication of probing and orbiting and track calculation settings. So more controlling mechanisms in process line settings in all position, right? Let's go into blue line cycles. Sets coordinate line center interference and travel, right? Get any position focus, cloak and dagger, cross location signals in position of process communication, right? Take it out of the equations. 3 central line communication line, how to calculate lines, machine operation screens, right? All right. So that's what you focus on in communication, right? So understanding navigation and controlling navigation and leading navigation are 3 different lines of factors over pi. 3 correlations, 2 track provisions, 1 cycle, 4 settings, 5 traction, right? So we have to start how to direct and redirect our line signals and line position of this program. See how I communicate my finger point lines and it stops in traction? Getting that communication, code weaving, okay? Line signaling, platform line position, okay? Square root, all right? So sets position lines of track applications, how to indicate position lines of thumb line, process line of the sun, rotate the cycles, line communication, line interference, and 2 track locations into console communication of 2 settings, into 3 set location. Directed lines of modification is 1 cycle line center that puts lines that correlate center interference to an H track. The H track correlation setting puts platforms of communication setting how to use your consoles and navigation. Process calculation lines is box line. So getting that communication lines of its computer operational line, the box line basically comes in the volume of dimensional lines of layers. Sets lines of communication outlines, cycles, and setting, right? So what you're doing is you're building blocks of center, process of your highways and your traffic of your flow, puts lines of its inventory in location setting in process calculation and calculation modified, right? So it just gets bigger and bigger, 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 bigger of expansion in the mind line to the machine operation of you through your vessel, pod, or vehicle set design or ship. All right, so you just come into higher levels of mind of expansion of stream, longitude, latitude, lines of screen, location, settings, and adaptation. Okay, and then we get into cloak and dagger, cross locations, and then we go into green. Okay, and then we go into levels of orange. Okay, and then we go into all levels of pink. See what we're doing in track location? The box is creating its own dimensional line setting of its machine operation of its own tether and lines of its own highway and track locational platforms. So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand how this all works in track locations all through a box. See? Amazing, right? So if you get the other half position, you got a pyramid. Let's see, there is a pyramid, see? at all different angles and a 4-split anomaly. There's the pyramid. See it? There it is. Oh, all through a box. All through a box. So the teams come into higher line settings now. Higher line divisions, multitude screens, division lines of high correlations, graph calculation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Puts lines of all communication setting and process. Now, getting the communication lines to location system, you can get into higher levels of being more bold in track locations, locking signals, line position, all levels, process calculation, screen lines, adaptation. Okay, taking out equations, back in setting. Changing communication lines, you also can go back in space and track location. Just outline it, right? And then you can go through tethers and 4-line position of travel, 1, 2, 3, and 4 set location. It's all set up, boom, right? All through a box, right? Now, get into the line set of high interference, add a 3-line cycle. Sets lines of position locations into 1, 2, 3 set location, right? Very powerful stuff, right? So if you look really close, you can actually see the correlation setting of 4 cycles in line setting in position of process, in track location in the 4-line communications of dockings and line conditions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 location settings of travel. Okay, now look at it all different angles in track location. What do you have? What do you have? An A-track division. See the A? See? See it? See? Powerful stuff, isn't it? And that's all through a box, right? So to create your lines of communication, you're creating lines of division, okay? Higher levels of division are lines of layers of files. There's your pyramid, right? Cross location of 45 split lines of anomaly, cross location setting of travels, right? Creating platforms. But this is all through a box, okay? Higher levels of levitation, higher levels of process, higher levels of communication, right? It's very powerful how you just connect through a box, right? So that position is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 line settings, so line communications. So line communication lines, pyramid equals lines of 12. 12 equals lines of 24. Sets lines equal lines of 144 platform. Sets communication line cycles into 1,444,000 line screens and adaptations of seconds, minutes, and hours in metric meters of scales of balance. Okay, powerful stuff, all through a box. Okay, so in that position lines of tractions, 4 and 3 is already set there. 43, right? So the whole line equation is 43. Equation equals lines of 43. All right, 43 track provision. That's 2 binary line calculations setting and travel. Okay, easy peasy lemon squeezy, all through a box, right? But it's amazing how you create it through a rainbow graph, right? So the more adaptation of the mind switches everything through its anomaly to all levels of transistors and resistors. But you come into more lines of communications to configurations of your lights and track lines and how to use your rainbow graph calculation screen lines of your traffic, of your indication line tensions to your indicators that puts all lines of process communication settings in your consoles of navigation. So very powerful stuff. All right. How's everybody doing so far? Getting a little bit more understanding? When you reach those levels of the intelligence and the communication of the brain, location of the computer, and the vessel calculation lines when it comes into machine line communication, you synchronize position travels, setting correlating line position, all lines. Process calculation of 4-line split lines anomaly. Sets correlation lines going down, set location lines are going up, and track location, right? Sets location lines are going up, set location lines are going down, and track locations, right? There's all lines of conversion location and setting. Process calculation lines, but the one thing that doesn't leave is the machine operation of view of center operation that says expands its anomaly in line settings and configuration of communication. Okay? So, but I just want you guys to understand what the team is coming into now, right? How you can just go through all this through a box and get all this through equation, right? Know exactly what you're doing through your own transistors, your own resistors, your own formula, your own equations, right? So, we all lines of communication lines. There's always a start, but there's never an end. So that's what the team has to get into applications. Every time you're setting up a binary, when you get a position and you have your eyes screen light connections, light goes on, right? So that's how I want you guys to have the the team's going to go in that position, and what's going to happen to the operation line cycles, the light switch is going to, right? And then you're going to see more, right? More frame, more window form, more box frame. You're going to see filters. You're going to see correlation. You're going to see more holograms. You're going to see more space, right? You're going to see the in-between. You're going to see out of the between. You're going to see in habitation. You're going to see the habitation zones. You're going to see the planets. The windows are going to be opened up more through calculation, right? This is expanding, right? So you start with this location lines, triangulation of flux. There's a flux here, line communications here, down across locations, right? So you become more of a configuration of the face, right? That communicates with the line gates. That communicates lines to location system. When you come in that track location lines to a smile and track location, or you come in position location of frown, right? So that's communication line screens, adaptation lines, infinity 8, and track location. Direct lines of platforms 1, 2, and 3 line cycles, or track interference 1, 2, 3 platforms and communications, cross locations, block lines, and settings. Then we get in position lines of 3 set locations, right? Direct lines of modifications that go into blue. Outline blue line rotation, outline blue line rotation, security line, defense line, communication, process calculation line screens, adaptation lines of red. We go in the red cycles, line conditions, outline rotation surface, and track location. Direct lines of modification lines, we go into cloak and dagger. Outline communication setting that travels into 4 line split lines of anomaly and track location. Direct calculation lines, let's go into all line position of pink. Pink line cycles, high center interference, high travel position, operation line cycles, and track location. All right, got my equation, right? So getting into more detail of your boxes now, team, right? Get into that expansion, get into those dimensional layers, get into higher levels of files. That gets you in all communications all through a box line, okay? All through a box in your rainbow graph screens and your holographic set location of rainbows. So you have to understand your foundation, your 12s, right? Everything has a different coloration system. But I want the team to get out of configuration. Remember we talked about that with security line where red is not security? It can be anything it wants, right? But the foundation doesn't leave the system. So Pluto's always going to be security. But to change that, you got to cancel that out. And you got to let Pluto know through 2-2 track provision. The cycle line, communication line, direct lines, box line, triangulation line, condition setting, equals lines, position lines, of course, center interference, 7 tractions, lines of 5. That sets lines, communication setting, 2 lines of rotation, surface, and track location. Now, direct lines of 7, 2 panels, operation line, triangulation lines of communications, box line of correlations, lines of circles, cross location setting, point lines of setting, 2 atom line rotation, surface, track calculus lines, ground centers, high operation, surface, and track location. All right. Setting position lines of 3 track location. Right? Platforms, line cross line conditions of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 line settings. Process communication ground center interference. Blocking system of 1 track line setting and security lines of measure. Community ground lines, highest interference. Time stamping, time line, time measure, and cross location. Process calculating line, security line defense, box line rotations. Let's go to coordinate line communication position of program, position lines of box location. Track calculus lines of platforms, line cross locations, 1 signal, cross line conditions in position location of the system through diamond core shift lines of anomaly. Travel lines, point lines of graph, line setting, high operation line, surface, and track location. Complicated stuff, right? But a lot of fun, right? Singularity, that's where I want the team to start off with in track location line conditions to its position of its process. Getting in that position location to its setting, right? Know exactly how to use that in track locations. So in again, and line rotations. When you get a voice line pattern, you always start with a box, triangulation, right? Okay, so you automatically connect with the male into the female cycle of track locations and infinity 8 line rotation, right? Setting communication. So you got box, you got triangulation, line condition setting, that position lines, equals lines of correlation lines of male, position location lines of female, line condition setting, 8 cycles, lines of communication. Process calculation line, equal lines, position location, depending on the DNA track locations. Now, they always start with the beta communication lines of alpha because they're not in their activation line. So it's beta alpha equals locations. Now, depending on lines, it's a 7-digit number. So that's line position of 0, 0, 0 for line communication lines equals lines, decimal point line 0, 0, line condition of 1. Okay? Now, that's line position of 2 binaries and correlation lines attractions, right? So we got a singularity, singularity, and position locations in 1 singularity, position location, 1 singularity. And we got a position locations in binary and 4 track location. How that sets up in line calculation setting is knowing exactly how to communicate and who you communicate with and how you're communicating with that setting in track locations in a beta wave, in a rotation surface, and traction. Okay? Starting off with the singularity of binary communication lines team. All right, so once your mind switches in 24 line cycles, your position locations, when you're communicating, you're going to see binaries of everybody else, okay, out through the voice line. So I want everybody to be ready for that, okay, because your mind is going to switch to binary. Hey, your binary line condition setting is a triangulation lines of box location lines. You got infinity 8 location setting. There's a line condition setting to a female line rotation cycles. You got 3 lines of zeros, line condition to 2 lines position location of 1. Right? That's the person you're talking to. That's the binary. That's their DNA. That's the process of 0 to 12. So getting into that position comes in seconds, minutes, and hours. How fast are you talking? Seconds, lines of seconds. Sets communication lines of highest interference. 60,000 line seconds. Right? That's 2 lines of cycles, right? All right, so you got 60,000 lines, right? And you got a binary lines of 3 track location, right? Direct lines of highest interference, male cycle and position lines of female cycle, or you got male, and female cycle and traction, right? So it's all about understanding how many people you're communicating with all at once in line communication position of the program. But you always are in position of singularity to position of binary in a formation location of patterns behavior that puts lines of emotion line in contact and set design. Now, this goes lines of information cycles where you can use lines of letter codes, communication codes, correlation line interference codes, rhythm codes, track location codes, direct lines of modification, code weaving codes, code weaving. Remember that line communications, flat surface line screen, flat lines, highest interference, 2 lines of 2 angles, line rotation service, 1 thumb in, 1 thumb out, track location lines, 1 cycle, 2 line centers, 3 track location, 4 line communications, and 5 division. And the center communication lines is 17 tractions, equals line square track interference. Getting lines of grounds, powers, and atmospheres, the team has to start recognizing their highways, or where they are at divisions of seconds, minutes, and hours. That platitudes of set location setting, the program set lines of communication setting to the binary, transistors, resistors, right? So they're on a negative cycle or they're on a positive cycle. Positive, negative line, communicate lines, highest interference box, location triangulation, equals line correlation lines of 8 tractions, right? So they're automatically an 8-line screen, sets position location setting, positive over negative. That's good in tractions. If it's negative over positive, that's off calculation. Right? NPC. See? NP equals lines of C. So the track location, you're always connecting lines to NPC traction, right? So never forget that. All right. So I'm just trying to get you guys how to balance these things out. So you really understand how to, oh my gosh, I understand how to graph the communication lines, the screen lines, adaptation lines, box, triangulation box. All I got to do is add infinity 8 line rotations of a question lines in a percentage and travel, or lines of Fibonacci line screen, or lines of triangulation, or star line screen line location setting. Process calculation line high interference, box location lines of triangulating position locations the male into female cycle track location. That's an algorithm. All put together, all the communications. Directing lines of cycles, the question mark is not a question, okay? The actual question itself is its answer, right? Which is affinity 8, okay? The center core system is the above system. The business line track location is 6 line. The track location line is the 9-line communication, 6 and 9, right? That's the question. So in that line rotation surface, puts every line and setting line communicates to its system. The track position lines of core track interference. They're automatically connecting lines NBC, core track interference in box and triangulation. Let's start with that traction, right? But they're always in line setting. So as soon as they have an infinity line, they have an 8-line rotation. Track calculation lines is 0 gravity. In position of point lines is 0, 0. Set lines communication lines in position of 0, 0, 0. Sets communication lines of 1 cycle, right? So sets lines of 4, sets lines of 3. So binary line condition setting of 3 tractions, and binary location of 3 tractions, puts lines of 3, 3 track location, right? That's the confirmation cycles, right? It's complicated stuff, alternate APC, right? So I just want you guys to always start with the box triangulation, right? Or triangulation box, how you are position lines. You pick it up because you'll see it. And when you see it, you understand the binary of its transistors, resistors to its light switches, right? Light switches, dark switches, round switches, correlation switches, circulation switches, circuitry line condition switches. Switches is everything line communication setting and location in your binary. The location setting puts all level communication. Let's go through 16 graph communication lines of 5, find line condition setting, let's position of 40 track locations, Sets lines of calculation on the screen lines. That's wake line interference. We're at 39 lines of 22, but we're at 40 line communication lines of 6 over 1 over 0, 5 lines of equal line correlations, 0 point lines, 0 calculation line, high interference, box regulation line position program. Okay? So I know it's complicated stuff, right? But I'm speeding up the anomaly because you guys have to be in position to know exactly how to use the question in interaction set locations. So the intelligence, always intelligence, all formation locations, right? All through 6 to 9, right? So that's the question. That's what a question is, yin and yang. Everything that you see and everything you process, everything has a voice line grid. So it's all about understanding. When you look at a computer, you know exactly what's going on. You turn on your computer, whoa, light is on, right? The binary's kicked in, right? It's setting up the algorithm, right? Setting up the ring graph. Sound barriers, sound waving, line cycles, line connections, high communication line interference, high program cases, all levels of alternative screen location, adaptation lines, and circle cases setting. Process communication lines of its voice and line grid opens all track location and provision, right? So when you turn on the computer, right, it's ready to go, right? So whatever you do with the keyboard, it sets up its algorithm. And that's how it sets things up as letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. So traffic of a flow, that it's inventory your system. So the line position locations, when it comes in line conditions 8,044 or 15,044, is knowing exactly how to balance out your settings of your space and your time. Slowing down your space, slowing down your flywheel, or anything like communicates to its system. Knowing how to put the inventories together and track location of zeros and ones. But knowing exactly how to use the DNA tractions, how it's an attraction line screen, adaptation lines of surface that sets the core system location of the cerebral and reattach the system location to its setting to its defrag of fragmentation. The oscillation line communication setting puts everything in program lines of communication setting to your position of your vessel, which is your machine. The process of communication line calculation setting puts everything to the brain of operation of its computer. And the mind navigates the communications that puts all of its operation line connection setting to your binary in position of all calculated, modified in seconds, minutes, and hours in track locations of navigation of travels. Okay? All right. How's everybody doing so far? You're going to have to watch this over and over and over and over and over and over and over until you understand the mind switch. And when that mind switch goes, it doesn't go back. You're locked in screen lines adaptations into 144 and track locations, right? But you can go down whenever you want, right? So that portal's open now. It's all track locations in 144 line rotation. Putting that communication line screens puts adaptation lines as surface. That's allocate position time frames. Okay, resetting correlation setting interactions. Directing modifications, track calculation line screen adaptation, right? That's how I have to communicate digital packages as a core line screen location, seconds, minutes, and hours position program. All right, so 144 platform, and track applications, right? Center core setting line position, all levels. Line conditions high center interference, 72. Size communication lines at height location 48, and position of 24, and line conditions of 12. That's how it's set up, right? 144. Size correlation line calculation setting, and position of 72. Line conditions setting 48, position location 24, line position of 12 in calculations. That's how it's set up, right? Cross location platforms are one cycle. Position lines at equal line correlation setting track lines. Platform communication lines, cycles, line generation, screen lines, adaptation lines, standard operation. That's how it's set up, your clockings. Matrix grid, split lines of anomalies, right down the line of communications, right? Direct line cycles, high correlation lines of 2 track location of 0, 4 lines setting lines of 0, 3 lines of setting lines of 0, 2 lines of set location lines, 4 track provision lines of 0, 2 lines track location of 0, 8 lines track location of 1, 4 line conditions of 0, 2 line track locations of 1 cycle and communication. Process calculation of ground lines, highest interference. Setting communication line, high interference location of 12 line cycles, line communication, clock line, position location, line condition, setting crop circle, set correlation line interference into earth calculation. Direct calculation lines of 2 lines of 4, 4 lines of 6, 7 lines of 8, 8 lines of 1, 7 lines of 2, 4 lines of 6, line centers of 2, and 1 track location. Direct lines of modification lines of platform communication of binary. That's binary how it's set up in traction. All right? It's crazy how that's set up, eh? But that's how your clock can set up, team. Okay? So you're locked in 144 in position when you get to 24 line. All right? You can go down, but you got to flex back up to 144. It's like you can go down, but it's pressure. It's you're compressing yourself. So you're climbing Mount Everest and like I can't breathe. I got to get the altitude line. I got to put in my oxygen location setting, the position of travel line. I can't breathe, right? So it's all about understanding getting that congestion and line condition to its atmosphere and getting that balance back in set design through its temperature reading. Wherever you go, you got to balance out your flux in communication. And 144 platform communication setting to travel. Okay? All right, so you start lines of communication, lines of travel. Sets lines of position on platforms 1, 2, and 3. Let's start with the platform communication setting at 0. Process calculates cross lines correlation setting, a 4-track location setting. Platform's triangulation line position its program, molecule design line at 3 platforms in data formation screen location adaptation. Process calculates line ground centers, operates line circles, operate center interference of travel. Hooah! Powerful stuff, isn't it? Intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. 3 cycles. Mind, okay, the brain, the vessel of the machine. That's how it's set up. See? Look. See? That's it there. Boom. 3 set line connection settings of travel. 4 line communication to the earth. In position of process of the crop circle. Woo! All right. Center communication lines. That's 4 lines of 8, 8 lines of 2, 8 lines of 1, 8-track location. Okay? Put that all together. What do you have? Intelligence, formation lines, and the mind lines that come to all levels of alignment, communication, machine operation of center. Wow! Looking at the top. Hey, up there. Hey, down there. Powerful stuff, eh? When you actually put the intelligence together to the brain conversion of the computer to the actual vessel correlations to its machine operation settings of 4 platforms is set design. Okay? But it's very powerful, isn't it? Right? But I'm just showing you that's how the clocking's set up in your settings and graph calculations. All clocking's set up that way now, even spacing line. Right? So the position of the mine itself, when it changes to the acceleration, it changes the particle subtronic line setting. The operational line screen that changes the adaptation lines of surface is going to change the super of its consciousness to higher levels of provision and resistance. Okay? So the higher you go, less resistance. Higher you travels lines, direct line signals all the way up, right? So you visit locations and settings, you're at position location lines, let's say 3 billion line cycles. You have billion line location system. 3 billion lines, right? 3 line cycles in a 24 line split lines of anomaly in a 40 line frame in a 72 computer line screen into 144 platform and track creation of 0 settings and operation surface. Communicate the ground lines and high center interference of 3 line communication of solar sail. Track calculation lines and operation lines, clock line centers, line rotation surface, and 24 angles. Direct lines of platforms, line condition, cross line settings, op calculation line setting, position of process. Process scrolls, location line setting, operate signals and calculations. Process calculating ground centers, the crop circles, and set design, the earth rotation. Intelligence. I love it. Look at it. It's amazing intelligence. Again, you can see it looks like Spider-Man. Woo! Powerful stuff from a 3 billion cycle line conditions of seconds, minutes, and hours, line position, square root, square frame, position case, line setting, high correlation, track interference, high precision operation. So metric meters, scales, centimeters, Hammond meters, line conditions, bino meters. Okay? Bino meters. Balance, intelligence, line, neutralize correlation lines of operator location setting and line communication setting and relays that travels line recognition time sequence location setting of balance communication lines of awareness that puts all communication of formation ground centers, operation cycles, and track location. Hooah! But you can see the intelligence, right? There's always going to be the intelligence on everything you do through schematics. Always, 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 always. So what comes first? The intelligence. What comes second? The brain, the computer. What comes third? Your vessel, the machine. Okay? Okay. On top of the tower. Watching, scanning. Okay. Very powerful stuff, eh? All right, we're done, guys. All right. So we're going to stop there because there's a lot going on in correlation lines of travel, right? So I just want you guys to understand what you guys are coming into higher levels of volume. Really understand how your position locations comes in calculations, how you can really get into higher level. Okay. Platitude your line screen when you come into your rainbow graph screens, into a rainbow, all through a box location, right? Expand the mind. Get into the expansion of the intelligence. Get a way to use the hardware and software of its binary of the transistor resistors. Get out of the resistance and be all you can be of all formation lines of the vessel, of machine, of operation. Woo! Okay? It doesn't get any more powerful than that, okay, guys? All right, I'll talk to you later.